everybody, I'm Dr. Kevin DeGroat. I'm a physical therapist, triathlon coach, and running coach with T0 Physio, located in Denver, Colorado. And today's video is about understanding injuries. And when we start to talk to our clients at T0, one of the things that we talk to almost everybody about is the three primary types of injuries. And I'm not talking about diagnoses, I'm talking about the type of injury it is. So the first is your typical, I got in some sort of traumatic event and I broke something, I tore something, I had some significant damage, but it's from trauma. So that's number one. Number two is your typical overuse injury. What we talk about is that these are build injuries. These are ones that over the course of time, you start to feel something kind of creep into your life and you don't do anything about it right away, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And the key there is that it gets worse and worse and worse. And the final type of injury is your more chronic type injury, which is that type of thing that doesn't necessarily fluctuate up and down. It's just kind of nagging all the time. So when we look at those three, the next thing that's important to understand is that all three of those, as we get older, are affected by our history. And I'm going to say that again because it's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially for the first one. When they think of traumatic injuries, they think of like, oh, I twisted my ankle, or I twisted my knee while I was on a run. No matter what, if it's traumatic, if it's a build type injury, or if it's a chronic injury, all three of those are affected by the past, because one of the most important functions of our brain is to protect us from further damage. And so when we look at the past injuries that we have, we start to look and say, or our brain starts to look and say, wait a second, I remember something like this happening in the past, or I remember pain in the past, or I remember, that other time when I was out on a run and I kind of twisted my knee and it felt kind of weird. And the number one goal of your brain is to protect that joint from further damage. So I like to tell people there's no such thing as an orthopedic injury in isolation. You're always going to have the past inform the present and future. And so if you're dealing with any one of those injuries, and we'll talk more about this in future videos, but if you're dealing with any one of those types of injuries, it's so important to understand, how is my body reacting to the past that's putting me in a position that it's actually protecting me from further damage? Because the number one thing that we have to do when we start to talk about rehab, the first thing we have to do is decrease the threat to your brain. If we decrease the threat, then we can start to build back up, and that's where you start to see the progress happen more quickly, as opposed to ignoring all the other things that have happened in the past and just going for it. We got to decrease threat first, and then we can start to go and build towards a more resilient future.